Please remain standing as I invite Dr. Ellis Burris, President of the Interreligious Organization, to lead us in prayer.
O God, our supreme and heavenly Father, we humbly beseech your divine presence at this august moment. We are confident, because of your loving kindness and divine mercies, you have heard our call and manifested in our hearts your resplendent beauty. Father, as we have drawn nigh unto your holy court, we request that you rain showers of blessings upon our twin island state, Trinidad and Tobago. Heavenly Father, on this holy and auspicious day, kindly diffuse abundant blessings upon our leaders and their families. Pour copious blessings upon the President, the outgoing and incoming Prime Minister, the Chief Justice, the members of Cabinet, the members of Parliament, the opposition leader, the Chief Secretary, members of the Executive Council, and members of the Tobago House of Assembly. Eternal Father, in this divine springtime, where all things are refreshed and reverberating in splendor, even unto the pui trees. Similarly, Father, we ask your favor in human affairs. Kindly cause our industries and commerce to flourish. As time runs to infinity, suppress crime and murders to zero. Every life is precious in God's sight, and as there is no copy thereof. Heal our nation, O God, as we amplify unity in diversity. We belong to one race, the human race. Father, we humbly beseech that the poor and the needy be uplifted out of the state of their wretchedness. O Lord, bestow thy gracious aid and confirmation upon this just government. This country lieth beneath the sheltering shadow of thy protection, and this people is in thy service. O Lord, confer upon them thy heavenly bounty. Render the outpourings of thy grace and favors copious and abundant. Suffer this esteemed nation to be held in honor, and enable it to be admitted into thy kingdom. God in truth keepeth watch over all things. Immeasurably exalted art thou, O Lord. Protect us from what lie in front of us and behind us, above our heads, on our right, on our left, below our feet, and every other side to which we are exposed. Verily thy protection over all things is unfailing. Lord, and when our tempers flare, let us say, greater is God than every great one. Greater is God than every great one. Greater is God than every great one. May the words of our mouth and the meditations of our heart be acceptable in thy sight. Everlasting Father, we shall not look back in anger, nor forward in fear, but around us in awareness that the kingdom is God's. As such, Trinidad and Tobago is submitted humbly into your hands. We sincerely thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Boris. Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated. Your Excellencies, Christine Carla Kangaloo, ORTT, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and Kerwin Garcia, SC, First Gentleman. The Honorable Kamla Persad Bissessar, SC, Prime Minister-elect of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. The Honorable Chief Justice, Justice Ivor Archie, ORTT, Chief Justice of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Senator the Honorable Nigel de Freitas, President of the Senate, the Honorable Bridget Anisette George, Speaker of the House, the Honorable Fali Chavez Agustin, Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, Your Excellencies, heads of missions and members of the diplomatic corps accredited to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Ellis Boris, President of the Interreligious Organization, all other specially invited guests, members of the media, and the viewing public. Good afternoon and welcome to the President's House. We are here to witness the swearing in of the Prime Minister and Attorney General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Subsequent to the general elections of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, held on Monday, the 28th of April, 2025, and in accordance with Section 75 of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, which states, "There shall be a cabinet for Trinidad and Tobago, which shall have the general direction and control of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and shall be the cabinet shall consist of the Prime Minister and such members of and such number of other ministers, of whom one shall be the Attorney General, as the Prime Minister to Excellency I now invite Honorable Kamla Persad, the oath of office Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago.
To Trinidad impartially, the best and to do right with or favor, affection. I do swear this Constitution.
Right. Jeremy, Senior Counsel, who are an appointed senator, is affairs of the Republic and receive his instrument of appointment.
Just come in the front.
Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, once again we present the Prime Minister and Attorney General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. So as we celebrate this auspicious occasion, we will now have the Flaming Word Ministries Choir, who will perform the song Goodness of God.
day I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire in darkest nights. You are close like no other. I know you as a father. I know you as a friend. And I have lived in the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after me. Your goodness is running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after me. Your goodness is running after me. Your goodness is running after me. When my life lays down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after me. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. Yes. And all my life you have been so, so good. Every breath that I am able, I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God.
Thank you very much, Flaming Word Ministries Choir, for that absolutely beautiful rendition of Goodness of God. At this time, I now invite the Honorable Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago to deliver her address.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. I love you too. Thank you. Excellency, Christine Carla Kangaloo, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and Commander-in-Chief of our Armed Forces, and Mr. Kerwin Garcia, First Gentleman, thank you for hosting us today. Honorable Chief Justice Ivor Archie, thank you very much for joining us today. Honorable outgoing President of the Senate, Mr. Nigel De Freitas, thank you for joining us. Honorable Bridget Anissa George, outgoing Speaker of the House, thank you very much for being here. The Honorable outgoing and incoming Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago, John Jeremy. Members of Parliament, Honorable Farley Chavez Augustine, Chief Secretary of the House of Assembly, High Commissioners, Ambassadors, and Heads of Mission, the Honorable Mr. Justice Adrian Saunders, President of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Dr. Ellis Harrison Burris, President of the IRO, Permanent Secretaries, specially invited guests, members of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. This evening, we stand as a nation, we stand together as a nation at the beginning of a new 5-year government term. A 5-year term where the real people of TNT will be put at the forefront. I say thank you to God and to our citizens of our beloved country. The campaign is over. You know our message of love, care, and happiness. I thank you again for believing our message. I thank you with all my heart. My role as your newly elected Prime Minister is simple. It's to love you and do everything possible to make you and your loved ones happy. For too long, we have carried a heavy burden of a government that seems to have forgotten you. It is time we rise to the occasion and let citizens take their rightful places side by side with their new government. It is said, to whom much is given, much is expected. We as a nation and a people have been blessed with much. Admittedly, we have also wasted much, unfortunately. It is time we set TNT on a right pathway, where we cease to govern to simply win the next election, and instead govern to create wealth and opportunities for 7 generations into the future. In these circumstances, we must do better. We must be more innovative. We must create meaningful opportunities and do right by all people so that we are all united as a nation and we can then step boldly into the future with confidence. I know that we have to be strategic. We have to be inclusive. We have to be dedicated. And we have to be focused on becoming the best versions of ourselves. This day starts the journey to rebuild our economy, to restore our security, to revolutionize our access to technology, diversify our revenue streams, and renew our people's hope, faith, and confidence to propel our beloved nation forward. Some of the seeds we will plant in this 5-year journey will blossom into trees whose fruit we may not eat, but our children and grandchildren and the generations to come will certainly eat that fruit. Our highest priority will be not just to communicate with you, but to commune with you. I will never be detached from your feelings and aspirations. I will never do my own thing while the country cries out for their needs. I will always be listening. I will be following you. You will be my priority. You must always know that you now have leaders who care and understand your problems. I understand how many of you who have been forgotten feel. after demitting this office of Prime Minister in 2015. For the last 10 years, I was a woman scorned, a pariah to many, because on their eyes, I had nothing material to give. For 10 years, my companionship was a photo of my mother and father hanging on my wall in my office, and my husband and children, and indeed the many loyal, dedicated, rank-and-file UNC members. Because they loved me for me, and not just for what I could give. And then I had friends who came and have never left over all these years. I want you to know then and understand, I know how it feels to be forgotten. I know how it feels to be humiliated and written off. I know how it feels to be kicked and stomped on when you're down. And that is how I know that it was the poorest and humblest people who came to my aid in those 10 hard years, while others had their foot on my neck. The old guard dies, but I want you to know, we never, ever surrender. To my incoming MPs, my incoming senators, government reps, I have said on the campaign trail that patriotism for the UNC is ensuring that everybody is treated fairly. Patriotism is ensuring everybody wins. And that means those who supported other political parties in the elections will also win with us. Patriotism for me doesn't mean allowing the majority of citizens to suffer while a greedy few do better and better. For me, patriotism means speaking up, having a voice. It means not staying silent to eat a food while poor and working classes are being abused or taken advantage of. Therefore, if you, as government reps, treat the citizens with love, I will reflect that love onto you. However, when I say this to my incoming government members, however, if you treat citizens with callousness, contempt, and corrupt ways, I guarantee you, your retribution will be swift and brutal. Never, ever mistake my physical appearance or my kindness for weakness. I think you all know there is nothing more dangerous than a mother who believes her children are in danger. Everyone will be wise to remember that for the next 5 years. To some fake elites and eater food financiers who have looted this country for the last 10 years, democracy may be imperfect, but once every 5 years, no matter your wealth or status, everyone is equal on election day. Beyond the lighthouse in Port of Spain, there is a country with real people. Real people with real feelings, dreams, and ambitions. They are all people too. This is their country too. That is why I dedicate my term as Prime Minister to the forgotten people of our country. If you're living on the fringes of Guanapo, if you're living in the coconut estates in Icacos, if you're in Kernahan Village, if you're in the river swamp, on the coastline in Charlottesville, or in the lagoons of Barkpo, I see you, we see you, every single one. If you're UNC, if you're TPP, PNM, PEP, or any other affiliation, I see you. You'll be treated equally and fairly. I made a promise that everybody will win, and I plan to fulfill that promise. On Saturday, we will swear in our full cabinet, And next week, we will outline our plans for the coming months. 6 months from today, under a new UNC government, you will be in a safer and happier place in TNT. You will see what happens when a government cares. We'll work to make you and your lives better. That is our promise to you. We have done it before, and with your help, we will do it again. Some may have treated the people of our land as problems, but I know that the people of our land, you are the solutions to the problems that we face. We have a real plan. We are ready to deliver. In the next 5 years, you are taking back your future. You are defending your family. You're standing up for every community that has been abandoned. You're fighting for every child who deserves better. We will rebuild hope. We will rebuild dignity. We will rebuild Trinidad and Tobago person by person, community by community, heart by heart. TNT is too blessed to be broken. As I close, I leave you with words from the Holy Book. 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 8 to 12. Finally, all of you, be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble. Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing, because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing. For whoever would love life and see good days must keep their tongue from evil and their lips from deceitful speech. They must turn from evil and do good. They must seek peace and pursue it. For the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their prayers. But the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. I say to you all, it is time to turn pain into power. It is time to turn frustration into action. It is time to choose courage over fear. It is time to choose harmony over division. It is time to choose hope over despair. So join me on this journey as we deliver on our promises, so we will all win together. Everything is going to be all right. And finally, you have had prime ministers before me. You will have prime ministers after me. But guess what? You will never, ever have a prime minister who loves you as much as I do. God bless you. God bless you all. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. And as we continue to celebrate this occasion, I now invite Giovanni Carnarvon Gibson of Trinity College East, who will perform the song Trini to the Bone and Three Little Birds. He will be followed directly by the wonderful songs of Mr. Nival Chetlal.
right, and of course, you are listening to New Era TT Radio as we are bringing you coverage of the swearing-in ceremony of the new Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Mrs. Kamla Persad Bissessar, and of course, the Attorney General, Mr. John Jeremy. Of course, this is where we are going to segue into our drive time program with our journalist Tony Fraser and his guest who is with him this afternoon. Tony, how are you?
Why, I'm great, man. How are you going?
Actually, I am pretty well, you know. I am good to go.
All right. Sweet, sweet TNT. Oh, how I love up my country. Yes?
Yes.
Good music there, man.
Yes.
And as you rightly indicated, we are going in to have some discussion. And I see one of our guests waiting there to be linked into the program, and another guest who is there, but he isn't showing us his face just yet, but I know he's there. Our guest this afternoon, Vasant Bharat, former government minister, former parliamentarian, and so on and so on. Welcome to the program, sir. Your microphone is muted.
His microphone is muted. His camera is off, so I don't know if he probably stepped away for a moment.
All right. But I see Clyde went ahead there. Clyde, good afternoon to you.
Hi, Tony. Good afternoon.
And
thanks for having me.
And thanks for coming, because we're in a little bit of a dilemma. We've been trying to get the Honorable Ferdy Ferreira to come, but doesn't seem to be his phone working, or he's not taking calls, or whatever the reason is, I can't tell you. But I see Vasant Bharat is there now. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you, Tony. Good afternoon to Clyde and to, of course, all of your listeners and viewers. I'm happy to be on.
Hi, Vasant.
So I guess we all heard, well, first of all, saw the swearing-in ceremony of Prime Minister Kamla Persad Bissessar. This is her second term of office. She was there from 2010 to 2015 as head of the People's Partnership government, and she spent 10 years, as it were, in the opposition, in the political backwater. Opposition politicians spend a lot of time in opposition, screaming and shouting and getting very little done because of the whole constitutional arrangements that we talk about all the time. But that's not the source of discussion this afternoon. It was good to see the Prime Minister taking the oath of office from Her Excellency Christine Kangaloo. And then we had the Attorney General, as is required, and we say this all the time in the media and elsewhere, is that a government has to be formed with a Prime Minister and an Attorney General. There can be other ministers thereafter, but once you have the Prime Minister and the Attorney General in place, as the saying goes, you're good to go. So John Jeremy, who was a former Attorney General in the PNM government, what the period is slips my mind now, and then he went as ambassador to London, and he returned, and a few weeks ago on the hustings, he appeared suddenly on the UNC platform. Of course, he was an Attorney General in a PNM government, and so it was a little bit surprising. Well, I shouldn't say surprising. Every election, these kinds of, different persons turn up on different platforms from where they originally were. He came up this afternoon as the Attorney General into the future. Any surprises there, gentlemen? Clyde?
I'm not too sure it's a surprise, because by the time we got around to the final rallies and I heard Mr. Jeremy's speech, I asked myself, is this an application? And it seems that it was. But, interestingly, when Mr. Jeremy was the Attorney General, that was the time with the Sat Sharma issue. And I happened to be in the Law Association already at that time. And we had a meeting at which a motion of no confidence was brought against him as Attorney General at the Law Association meeting by the wife of Ramesh Lawrence Maraj, who was around that time a UNC member. And I remember asking if the Attorney General was invited to the meeting and if the motion was sent to him. And the answers were in the negative. And I had to ask the meeting, if we are attorneys, how do we deal with things like this in this manner that is unfair? And when similar situation came up recently with respect to Mr. Amor, I had spoken about what happened then, and suddenly I was contacted by Mr. Jeremy for the first time in my life, and he said, well, I see you still have a level head because you still upholding your principles. I said, well, I try to do that. And well, we've had very brief words now and again since then. So I know that part of his tenure as Attorney General was that he took up the issues of the Piarco Airport matter in terms of the questions of the corruption issues and so on. So that it is interesting to see him as the Attorney General in this government.
All right. Let me ask Vasant Bharat if it was surprising to you, and how do you perceive the appointment of John Jeremy, former PNM Attorney General, former member of the party, honorary consul to the London, etc., etc. How do you perceive of that appointment by Prime Minister Kamla Persad Bissessar?
Well, clearly, Mrs. Bissessar, as Prime Minister, would now have a wide range of choices, more so than when she was in opposition, as is the case in every government. Once you form the government, you have access to a wider range of opportunities and a wider range of choices to choose from. I think Mrs. Bissessar and Attorney General, now John Jeremy, I think there's a relationship that goes back a long way to Hugh Wooding and so on. So there is a long-standing relationship. I did have a conversation with John several weeks ago, and I got an inkling that this might be on the card. So I'm not overly surprised, but I think a lot of UNC supporters may be very surprised. But I think from Mrs. Bissessar's perspective, she's clearly looking at finding a way to ensure that the polarization that has taken place very starkly, I think, in the last 10 years. I mean, it's always been there, but I think in the last 10 years, there was an exacerbation of it. I think maybe this is her way of trying to bridge that gap somewhat, and not just in terms of race, but in terms of our politics. And so therefore, she's probably looking at John Jeremy and possibly others to form the cabinet that will go a long way to healing. Because I think, Tony, there is a lot of scarring that's taken place over the last 10 years in the population. And some of it is deep-seated, some of it may be superficial. But I think as a country going forward, before we can look at doing the big things, we need to start to heal a lot of those scars, a lot of those wounds. And this may be just the start of it.
Yeah. And actually, Prime Minister Persad Bissessar reflected on some of that and her own scars, as you call it, over the period of time that she has been in opposition. And obviously, anyone in opposition feels the weight of the government. And I suppose if you ask PNM members when they were in opposition, they also felt stung And I suppose that's the nature of the politics going forward. As to what the Prime Minister has said, especially with regard addressing some of those same problems that the society has had for a long, long time, about oneness. She talked about oneness, about crossing over, about healing scars, etc., etc. And I think some of that if you put it another way, she had an opportunity, the party had an opportunity in 2010 to do some of that. And as we know, the coalition fell apart quite quickly, and there was left behind. It was called People's Partnership, but it was essentially UNC after a lot of people left. Errol McLeod was perhaps the only person who stayed on, only person of significance from the other side who stayed on for a period of time. So let's enter the discussion about which I asked you to participate in, and that is looking at the political situation now. You have the UNC plus. I'm not too sure if they are calling it formally a coalition yet, and if there's going to be some kind of name appendage or whatever it is. So we have to stick with UNC coalition, UNC association for this period of time. What are the challenges in front of the party to stay together, which I think is, and Vasant hinted at that, which I think is their first and major challenge, to cohere around a set of principles and policies which have not been articulated so far. So Clyde, what kinds of challenges they will face and how well you think they will deal with those challenges?
Challenge is always for any government to be able to maintain its cohesion while in office, because quite apart from implementing promises that were made, and since the NAR, it has become a habit that governments adopt their manifestos as official government policy. So if those manifesto promises were based on some strategizing group or some small group of people defining the policy and the platform of the party for elections, and not everybody was fully in agreement with it, then when you get into the cabinet, the differences will show up. The fact is that in 2010, within the government, there were the UNC with a number of seats, over 20. COP had 6 seats, and there were two other seats. Well, basically, there was a bigger group other than the UNC inside of the cabinet and the government, as well as there was the MSJ and there was NJAC and so on. The fact is that at that time, going into office, there was no organizational consolidation of the coalition. And from the COP's direction, we tried to have discussions, which went on for quite a while. At one point, Joe Tony was the chairman of the COP. At another point, Carolyn C. Persad Bechan. And for the UNC, there was Jack Warner representing them, and we had talks about structuring the coalition, but we were already in government, and it simply never happened. So that the people within the cabinet basically operated on their own, and I can say from within the COP, there wasn't much party direction or consolidation as a smaller group within the larger government. So that basically the people, ministers ended up kind of operating in silos as we would have seen in the last 10 years. And while some things got done, the coordination and the oneness of our government based on a one idea kind of outlook was a little weak. And then things showed up based on the allegations that started to arise, and the MSJ took a side, and that was it.
So Vasant, what Clyde is hinting at is something of the difficulty in pulling together a serious coalition with a set of principles and ideological base and all of that. Do you think that that kind of difficulty will attend this particular government led by Mrs. Persad Bissessar?
I think the one difference between the major difference between what exists today and what did in 2010 was that the COP was a significant political force based on numbers of people who supported it. And there were people in the COP that had gravitas and had national stature. And they came to the table, as Clyde said, unfortunately, after an election or just before an election, but there were fundamental ideological differences between the two groups. For all intents and purposes, what you have today is a UNC party with a Labour content. I wouldn't really put the smaller parties like PEP and Love Movement and so on in the same category as I would do with as I would a COP of 2010. And so therefore the demands from within are going to be far less now from those smaller parties because they don't have leverage as the COP did in 2010. So from that perspective, I don't see any political wranglings internally. The only way I would see any issues arising would be if the labor movement, to whom much has been promised, are either impatient or are not able to get within a certain time frame what they believe is their due based on the effort that they have put in. So I think it's a different situation. I think it's far more workable today than it would have been, than it was in 2010, simply because of the strength that the UNC holds within this so-called coalition of interests. Most people will essentially fall in line and do as they are told to hold the government together. Because in a lot of instances, many of them don't have options.
Yeah.
The issue, as I say, is the issue is would the labor movement become impatient if they're not able to get what they want immediately? And then the other thing, it's always easy to be a cohesive group if things are going well on the outside. So externally, if things are going well, it's easy to be cohesive, or it's much easier to be cohesive. If it is that the government is not able to maintain the kind of promises that, or deliver, let me say, the kinds of promises that have been on the platform, that have been espoused on the platform, that makes it more difficult because the pressures now start to act from outside on the inside, and of course things then start to unravel. But I feel with the right personnel, Tony, a lot of what has been promised can be achieved.
What of contentions. I've never been in a political party or in a political huddle but I can just assume what goes on inside there, and what goes on inside there comes out in the end for everybody to see. I'm thinking about, political concern as you talk about a major group being the UNC. And bits and more than bits and pieces, things are being handed out, starting with the Attorney General, from not within the party, but from outside of the party. That I am sure, given human nature and given what comes out and has come out, there will be jealousies and concerns and rumbling and so on. Do you see that happening, Vasant?
Not initially. If things go well, I mean, everybody is, there are a lot of newcomers to this government as well, remember, a lot of new parliamentarians. I also expect that there will be a lot of, the major ministries will be run by people coming in from the outside of the, not necessarily outside of the party, but from the outside of the elected member.
Senators and so on.
Yeah. And many of them are professionals. So I don't see any great levels of anxiety or envy taking place initially, because everybody's happy to be in government. Let's be honest. As they say, the worst day in government is better than the best day in opposition. Mm-hmm. So everybody's happy to be in government. So I think everyone's going to settle down. There's going to be a settling period for. There will be a lot of new ministers. It will take them some time to settle in. So I think once the Prime Minister gets the mix right in terms of experience and inexperience, the mix between those who are not elected and those who have been elected, and most importantly, I think she must be cognizant of the promises that she's made and the level of capability and competence that's required to deliver those promises. And our reality in Trinidad and Tobago is, whether we like it or not, and whether we choose to admit it or not, the population is not going to be as tolerant of a UNC government as they may be of a PNM government. And so therefore, that is something that she has to also bear in mind and take into account.
So we are talking this afternoon with Clyde Weatherhead and Vasant Bharat, and we are talking initially about the swearing-in ceremony of the Prime Minister, and of course all that is circulating around that. We had John Jeremy, a former PNM Attorney General, being sworn in as the Attorney General as required by the Constitution. You have to have the Prime Minister and the Attorney General to begin to operate like a government. And as I said, we have Vasant Bharat and Clyde Weatherhead here talking with us. The question now, Clyde, about do you feel, well, let me start from where Vasant left off. Do you feel that there will be assimilation and coming together and working towards, something that is of the national good rather than of a group nature, the UNC or the labor movement, etc., those elements of it? And notwithstanding the fact, Vasant, that you have those one-person parties and so on. I think those fellows will still have expectations. They may feel they have contributed something, I don't know what, but they have contributed something to this government. And if they are left out in the sun, that might cause a little bit of trouble. Clyde, do you see the cohering taking place smoothly and easily over a period of time?
Well, Tony, today is May Day, right? Today is International Working Class Day, and the trade unions, I know it was scheduled to have a celebration in San Fernando this morning. I'm not sure how it went because I haven't seen any reports. But the participation in this campaign and government has basically been a decision of leaders of trade unions. And there are some worrying issues around that. For example, last week or week before, a group of 8 trade unions issued a statement basically saying, we are not of the view that we should be in the government. And some of those unions were, in fact, public sector unions, of which the government is both the government and the employer. And they basically said the history of the trade union movement in Trinidad and Tobago is the history of being independent of the political parties, so that whoever is the government, we will have to deal with them, and we need to be able to deal with them at arm's length in that sense. Certainly, the so-called workers' agenda that the UNC agreed with, and which became campaign promises in terms of items basically of collective bargaining. So, as though negotiations went on.
And part of the manifesto too of the UNC.
So it appears as though negotiations went on inside of an election campaign, in terms of between a party and some trade unions. The fact is that same thing went on in 2015, that there was a workers' agenda and there was an agreement with the PNM. But when the PNM got in office, that agenda disappeared. And the last 10 years was quite the opposite. But such an agreement between a party and a political party and trade unionists is not an enforceable agreement. It's not a legal agreement. So the party doesn't have a legal standing in the society. They don't have a corporate form.
Yeah, but Clyde, listening to the Prime Minister and her statements with regard to cooperation and working together and so on, is it that she has learned from the experience of 2010 to 2015, and she and the UNC may be more amenable to cooperating and coming together and meeting the needs of all the elements of the government?
Well, I would hope so, for the sake of Trinidad and Tobago. The difficulty is that the members of the unions who are now expecting certain things, more so than those two persons who are in the parliament, the members are expecting things. So if those things don't materialize, there will be pressure on the trade union leaders from their members to have what they were promised. The difficulty is this. As Vasan said, this coalition, if we could call it that, is more strongly UNC than in 2010. And those two gentlemen from the Southwestern Peninsula, those two representatives are going to be under the whip of the UNC in the parliament. So they will be faced with the dilemma that the so-called dissidents had in the last parliament, and whether they can exercise a conscience vote or not, they would face the dilemma of, do I follow the party line, which is the line of the government, basically the UNC line, or do I follow the line that I think the trade union movement wants? Because there's no cohesive trade union decision about those two gentlemen being candidates in the first place and now being parliamentarians.
Let me ask Vasan Bharat, who probably knows Prime Minister Kamla Persad Bissessar better than either Clyde or myself. Well, I cannot speak for Clyde, but sure.
Yes. Well, he would know her better than me.
Yeah. Vasan, do you, to my question to Clyde, of her being more mature, more understanding, realizing, and I'm sure that she has some notion of that, and I'm not forcing anything on her. She has said it. She's coming towards the end of her political career, and she has talked about her health challenges. Again, those things have come from her, not from me. I don't know if psychologically those things bring an individual to a position where she has, in her case, she has to start looking at her career, what she has achieved, what she will leave behind, and therefore, in those circumstances, be more amenable to cohering with both with her UNC members, because there was a big fight outside of and before the election with her own members. Is she likely to be more capable of understanding and bringing people together?
I think from her public discussions, public utterings, as well as in private discussions I've had with her, I think she's very keen to ensure that the mistakes that were made in 2010 to 2015, which she's talked about, does not happen again. I think she understands that there was a significant amount of disillusionment and disappointment from the 2010-2015 period with the population, even though there were so many deliverables from in that period. I think no one can question the fact that that period, 2010 to 2015, brought a lot of deliverables for the country in many different sectors. Granted, the price of oil was relatively high at $140 for quite a significant part of that. But the reality is people felt safer, they felt more prosperous, they felt happier, they didn't feel this burden on their shoulders. We created, the UNT created, or the partnership created several thousand jobs, over 50,000 if I remember correctly. I remember in the Ministry of Agriculture, we did a significant amount of work for farmers across the country. In the Ministry of Trade, the ease of doing business, we moved, from 88 to 62, and Trinidad and Tobago in 2014 was viewed by the World Bank and ranked by the World Bank as one of the top 10 movers and in terms of reforms in ease of doing business in the world. So a lot was achieved. And I think she's cognizant of, despite the fact that all of those things were achieved, and I mean, I only called two ministries, the ones I was involved in, but there were others, that the party was voted out of office because of a disappointed population. And I think she must have reflected, and she spoke about that today, the 10 lonely years in the wilderness. She would have had adequate time to reflect on that, and many, many, many times. And so I feel that she will, now that she's back in office, she wants to almost correct a lot of that, make amends for a number of those mistakes, and prove to the population that she's worthy of being asked by the people to be prime minister again. And I don't think she's going to mess up this time.
Okay. What of, thinking about it over the last couple of days and going through those persons who have been elected and who expect to get a ministerial job placed in front of them, I had a serious concern for the lack of experience and expertise in specialist areas and so on. And, the capacity will probably determine how well they can move forward, notwithstanding their inexperience. So, Clyde, how do you expect them to perform in the various ministries that will be given to them? And I'm sure that the Prime Minister is fully aware that she can't sweep aside elected members completely and bring in senators and people who were not, as the politicians say, out on the hustings doing the work. That's going to be a challenge, isn't it, Clyde?
Well, it is always a challenge, even if it is a single party in forming the government. Um, the thing is that there are two sets of things that I think are critical. One is that the cabinet itself must have a collective understanding of where they're going, and that has to translate into the specifics of the different ministries. And then the ministries need to not operate in the silos that our system puts them in. So that if there's a strong coordination at the cabinet level, that will be very useful. On the other hand, from the time those ministers walk into their ministries on Monday, whether they experience or not, I hope one thing they understand is make sure and sit down and talk to your permanent secretary. Because that person, more than any ex-minister, somebody asked me today, are they going to hand over? I said, well, they don't hand over. Basically, the PSs who run the ministries, they know what was happening. They know what is the state of the ministry, what is the state of the programs it is carrying out. And they basically do the handing over, if we could put it that way. So the ministers, not only at the start, but from the start, they need to establish a relationship with the permanent secretary in their ministry or the permanent secretaries in order to have some kind of success as a minister. There's the question of collective responsibility and individual responsibility of ministers, but the position of permanent secretary, the Constitution and the Civil Service Act basically says they are not to manage a ministry, but they are to supervise. So their role needs some fixing as well, but they are the people who are there when ministers come and go, and the minister must understand that they are accounting officers and they have to have a proper relationship with them to be able to get things done.
Let's talk a little bit about the economy. And I'm not talking about, the promises that politicians make on the campaign trail. You'll get this, you will get that, you get 10%. We starting at 10%. And I'm not talking about those spin-off from the economy. I'm talking about what has been the historic problem. And sometimes I get tired of hearing myself saying it and tired of writing it and other people talking about, but the diversification of the economy from the total dependence on energy matters. And when I say that, I make the point that I am not advocating or saying in any way that we should leave the resources in the ground and don't utilize them. In fact, we have to utilize them quickly because the world is going in a different kind of way now, and we can't leave those things in the ground. So I'm not saying that we can't and we shouldn't and we wouldn't. Any government comes into power and ignores the energy resources would be foolish to do anything like that. I have not heard anything from the platform, indeed of both parties, the two major parties, about understanding and tackling this problem of diversification and transformation of the economy in a serious kind of way. Does the UNC, what you know about this UNC and the cabinet and the prime minister and so on, we don't know who the ministers will be. I expect they will bring in some economists and people have business sense and so on. But do they have the capacity to tackle this business of transformation in a serious way? Vasant.
Well, again, it comes down to the personnel who would be involved, Tony. As I mentioned earlier on, I suspect that a large brunt of the workload will fall on the shoulders of senators, who would be brought in with a level of expertise that may not exist currently amongst the elected members. So they would bring with them a certain level of experience, expertise. They would have most of them, I presume, would have worked in the outside world, outside of the political arena. So they would understand deliverables. They would understand ensuring that things happen when they're supposed to happen, and so on. I think I just wanted to go back to something Clyde said about the permanent secretaries, who, of course, are the people that continue the work from minister to minister or from government to government. Sometimes you have radical changes in policy that are so different from what existed previously that there's no continuity essentially, because the permanent secretary of the ministry has to come to an abrupt halt on something they may have been doing with another government, and it's completely reversed and it goes in a different way. But I suspect that we have a golden opportunity. Every time a government changes, we have a golden opportunity in the country to very quickly, not any long leading or long running period of time to change things. We have a golden opportunity here to quickly relook at the things that we've developed as governments in the past, not just UNC or PNM, but in the past, over the last 20 years or so. Have an opportunity to immediately relook at the area of diversification. What has happened in the last 6 months, 8 months, last year is completely different to what may have existed 10 years ago in terms of where the world is going. So we have an opportunity to relook at the areas and the sectors that we can be competitive in based on the demands of the real world. Because whatever we do here in Trinidad and Tobago, we don't have the economies of scale to do it profitably if we're not able to export those goods and services to an outside market. So we've talked in the past about diversification. We've talked about financial services, where we could locate Trinidad and Tobago as a financial hub for Central and South America, because we have certain advantages, geographic, linguistic, and many other advantages that where we can attract people to Trinidad and Tobago in the financial services sector. We have a very deep and wide and strong financial services sector here in Trinidad and Tobago. You may or may not know, Tony, that in Trinidad and Tobago, we were not affected significantly by the 2008 financial crisis, as other countries were. So we have that. We've talked ad nauseum about tourism, but medical tourism or educational tourism, sports tourism. We have all these
service tourism.
That's correct.
We had Vanos James here a couple of weeks, and him talking about all the possibilities of the service tourism, which, according to him, are greater than, depending on people coming to the hotel, etc., etc.
Absolutely, telemedicine as part of that, So we have a number of areas that, and we've talked about the creative industries, agro-processing, and I think one of the big things that we can do here in Trinidad, and we can do it in a 5-year period, is our marine sector, both with the yachting, the yachties in the western area down here in Chagaramas, as well as in La Brea, where there was a proposed port, a deep water harbor port that would act as two things. One, repairs and maintenance for large vessels coming through the Panama Canal. And secondly, as a transshipment point for smaller vessels coming in, where they transship almost like Singapore and then onto other destinations. So we have the models. We just need to relook and see whether the technology has changed so significantly with AI and so on that we can actually tweak it, make it better. Do we need to drop certain things? Do we need to concentrate on other things? What are the areas that the world wants and demands that we can be competitive in? And we need to do that quickly. We don't need to do 3-year studies, and by the time we finish the study, an election is ready on our doorsteps and so on. I think that if we have the level of expertise brought in by the Prime Minister, those things can happen very, very quickly.
No, I am concerned about that, because my mind goes back to Prime Minister Rowley in his last government, or was it the first government? I think it was the second government, appointing the EDAB, headed by Terence Farrell and filled with economists and planners and thinkers and so on. And if you read Terence Farrell's account of it, he said that they supplied the government with a series of proposals after 2 years, which should have been implemented. Nothing was done. And this was a government, and this came from a government that sought out these people and put them in a committee to work out these matters, and yet they ignored them. And then they had the roadmap, which also went by the roadside, and nothing was done about it. So that knowing and the requirement for all these transformational things and doing something about it.
There was one
very different.
There was one stumbling block in both those areas, both the roadmap committee and the economic development, and that was a gentleman called Mr. Colm Ilmbert. That was the one stumbling block that the government had throughout. I was part of the roadmap committee, and you're right. If the government had implemented even 1/4 of the recommendations, Trinidad and Tobago would be in a far better place today. But I've said this. I said this to Prime Minister Rowley. I've said it to other ministers of government and in the PNM government. The stumbling block was a gentleman called Mr. Colm Ilmbert.
There was another committee, and I spoke to the chairman some time ago, the committee that looked at Laventille.
Yes.
And that committee was established after a series of murders in the area. And, at one point in time, I thought that the recommendations and plans were being held for an approach to an election. And therefore, you could do so and so and so and so on. And nothing has happened out of it. But that's an amazing thing. Clyde, right ahead. Do we have the capacity? And I say we because any government in power, whether you support the government or not, it's still we. Do we have the capacity and the political will to engage in these things, which are not new? Sir Lewis had been talking about it, 60, 70 years ago. There's nothing new with regard to the requirement for diversifying the economy of Trinidad and Tobago and indeed the Caribbean. Do we stand a chance of those things being taken very seriously in this term of office?
Well, I think, as Vassant said just now, he identified one person as a stumbling block. I will identify not a person, but an attitude. You see, our political system, as it has been established and it continues, places in the hands of the cabinet or even individuals within the cabinet a certain amount of power to accept or reject things that people say. So the way we have structured our governance doesn't make it easy for the elected people who are in the cabinet to take the advice or take suggestions from the population, whether those suggestions come through NGOs or through structured things like the various committees that we just spoke about and so on. Look at the last example. The last government appointed a constitution committee and then call a convention and say we don't accept anything or they say. So it's the same attitude.
Because that has a long history behind it. Yes. Constitution commissions reporting, and the Prime Minister who appointed them say, look, yes. You're doing this stupidness.
Yes, so the thing is that from in the early days, there was this dichotomy in 1962. There was the party politics a la Williams, which basically said, we decide everything, we in charge, right? And there was another approach that was suggested by an organization called Pegasus, which incidentally was founded and led by Geddes Granger, which basically they developed a kind of plan for the country for national development, which when they documented it, as Granger put it, he said the thing looked so much like a manifesto that the PNM thought we were going to fight them in politics, and they lick us up. So, the basically where Napa is right now is where Pegasus was suggesting should be an art center since 1962. A national stadium in Entrance City is what they proposed. And the Coca-Cola company in McCoy said, okay, we'll give the scoreboard and so and so and so. We never had a national stadium until after Hasty Crawford. So the fact is that these things, among the population, we have the capability to produce the ideas and plans that we need. What is needed is a different kind of political view from the level of the cabinet that says, let us trust the population. I know there's a lot of discussion about the population trusting the politicians, but the politicians need to be trusting the population
Well,
and taking them into their confidence.
I have a personal view, which this is not my forum to articulate it, but I think the political parties, we can't, as they exist, I'm talking about most the major parties, and I looked at the EBC report. There were 20 political parties that contested this year. I think there were 2 or 3 individuals, so 17 political. Total madness, but that's another story. And the capacity of the major ones to do anything significant, I mean, that demonstration has been before the country for a long, long time. But as I say, I don't want to go off on any little personal hobby horse of mine. I'm writing about it, incidentally, so read it in my column on Sunday. Now, we are talking with Clyde Wezhead and Vasan Bharat, and we spent some time talking about the government coming into office, the statement of the Prime Minister, the fact of John Jeremy being made Attorney General, and whatever else you say, the visual of it, of the major Indian party putting an Afro-Trinidadian in this very significant position of Attorney General is good visual stuff. And notwithstanding the fact that the 2 parties remain seriously on one side or the other of the fence. And some of that has been reflected in the response to young Stuart Young and by some people who voted for him, and we're going to get into that. But just to indicate that we are talking about the possibilities, we have talked quite extensively about the UNC and the government that is in power and will go into power fully by next week, I presume. And now we reflect on the People's National Movement.
But Tony, before you go there, between Monday and today, and I thought perhaps today they may have come and sworn in the whole cabinet. But in discussions with people, certain questions were asked, who you think would be the AG? And there was a whole set of speculation in the press about lists of people in different positions and so on and so on. But
cabinet.
Yes. Significantly, none of those speculations spoke about a minister of planning nor a minister of public administration. But everybody talking about we need to improve the capabilities of the public service and so on and so on. But nobody is asking who we think going to run that. People talking about diversification and economic, we have to get over the economic problems, but nobody is talking about who is the Minister of Planning and Development. So I know we have kind of a weird sense of where we place an emphasis in this society.
But I just insert into that. I remember Winston Dukaran saying after the NAR period that he spent 5 years as a Minister of Planning, pushing pieces of paper around and nothing happened and so on. But again, as another story. So let's go into what's going to happen to the PNM? As a number of them have been saying, it's not the worst defeat that the PNM has experienced at 33-3. And I remember very well being covering that campaign and all of that. And I thought to myself, well, this is really the end of the People's National Movement, at least silencing them for 20-25 years. But of course, the other side erupted and they were back in power in 5 years. How do you think, Vasant, they will deal, or how have they started already dealing with being in opposition once again, defeated by the United National Congress?
Well, first of all, I'm sure that many of them would have been stunned by the result. I don't think many people would have expected the PNM to suffer a loss of that magnitude. Most people believed this was going to be a relatively close election, despite the fact that the last 10 years has been difficult in Trinidad and Tobago. Upon reflection, I think that, and I said I was one of those in that category who felt it was going to be a relatively close result. Upon reflection, though, and when I think back at a number of conversations I had with ordinary people who traditionally had voted PNM, who had said, I'm not going to vote, or boy, fed up with this, and they actually hardened that position. And I think to a large extent, whether we would like to accept this or not, I think it came down to the manner in which Stuart Young was appointed. I think that stuck in a lot of people's craws. I'm talking about people who traditionally support the base of the PNM. I think it just stuck in their craw, and they didn't vote for the UNC, of course, but it stuck in their craw so much that it was a protest non-vote, that they were just not prepared to go out and vote for that.
Before you go on, Vasant, do you think the fact of Stuart Young being who he is, and we mustn't pretend, and I'm not saying that any of us is pretending, is that this country, the two major political parties have been built along ethnic, tribal lines.
Correct. Yeah.
As Lloyd Besser used to say. And, somebody coming from outside into the arena and being given this position. I remember too, when the thing broke down between Basdeo Pandey and Ramesh Maharaj and that group of people, Carlos John was being inserted into, or attempted to be inserted into, a position, and groups in the party say, no, that can't happen here. Do you think there was some of that with Stuart Young?
I think there was more than some. I think that was a major part of it, but I think it may have been a little bit more palatable had he gone through the rigors of an internal election. I'm not suggesting for a moment, even if he had won, that things would have been overturned and the entire base would have come out. There would have been still people who would have been disgruntled. But I don't think the loss of support of 100,000 would have been the case. I think they may still have lost, but I don't think it would have been that amount. But I do agree that the fact that it was a person of non-African descent didn't sit well with the base of the party. That's our reality. The fact is now, I think they've moved very speedily.
Sorry, before you go on, just I looked at the EBC figures today, just to give our listeners some appreciation of the number. It's close to 150. In fact, I think from memory, it's 154,000 votes lost from the first time. That's 2015.
That's correct.
That's correct. Time.
Quite correct. Quite correct. And just about 102,000 from 2020. So it's a significant number of votes that you've dropped. But I think they have now, they've clearly and very quickly understood the problem. And so they've moved swiftly to try to correct it through their General Council meeting yesterday, the election now of Penelope Beckles as the leader of the opposition, and they will regroup. I mean, I was in government in 2010, and after Dr. Rowley took over the PNM in 2010, they regrouped very quickly and they came at the throats of the UNC almost every Monday morning. They were prosecuting a different issue and prosecuting it well, as an opposition should do. So I think that the PNM is a very resilient organization. They've lost before. They've been in power. They've been in office for many decades. They are an institution. Let's be honest. And so therefore, the internal mechanisms will operate very quickly. I don't think there will be any lazing about, with regard to who will do this, who will do that. They've moved very quickly. They've shown decisive action. And I think they're going to come back strong. And they're not just going to sit back and allow the UNC to carry on. They are going to be at the UNC's throats from Monday morning.
Because they have a lot of experienced politicians on their side. Even the number is merely 13, merely compared to the 26 that will be on the other side. My good friend Clyde, how do you think the PNM will fare going forward?
Well, the thing is that understanding what happened, there was a reduction in the PNM support between 15 and 20. And that level of dissatisfaction based on the economic issues and so on, it was not enough. I think the UNC overestimated it in 2020 because they felt people were vexed enough with the PNM to vote them out then. But they won't. What happened with Stuart Young, in terms of the way the political leader, and that's what I describe as hubris, he assumed himself to be of a certain power within the party, and he felt that he could direct the party in a certain way, and there was a mini revolt in that respect within. Now,
are you saying that he took basket, to use a nice term, from his political leader?
Well, Stuart took basket, but the point is that we have to be careful in what we do in the sense of politics and governance and generally in social relations of how we define ourselves. And it goes right back to Williams and his defining of party politics. He and C.L.R. James, they broke apart on the issue of trying to define what is party politics. And he threw James out of the party after a while. And that is how they operate.
The rest too.
Yes. So the point is my way or the highway. And Dr. Rowley embodied that kind of thing more and more over the 10 years to the position that when they lost the THA was again because of the same kind of thing. He literally licked up Kelvin Charles, who was the then chief secretary, and there was an internal, we ain't voting for that. and they got out of the, basically except for one division, out of the THA. So then he escalated that now in 2025. The fact, you see the PNM has, in a way, I hear all of them on the radio and on social media for the last couple of days trying to say, oh, we's not no black people party, we's everybody party, and PNM was always a movement of everybody. Where did this party start? It started with the urban, middle class, professional types who formed the party, and where did the then PDP, then DLP, where did that start? It started in the rural areas with Badis Maraj as the religious leader, the trade union leader, and the political leader. He was a triumvirate. And it is that dichotomy between the urban and the rural that continues to exist. It just so happens that the rural people were more the Indians and the rural were more African. So if we remember, Williams declared a state of emergency, not Williams, the colonial authorities, in the countryside when there was political violence taking place in Barataria and Port of Spain, but they declared a state of emergency in the countryside to prevent the then DLP from campaigning to make sure that the PNM win. Basically, that has happened. So when people now are saying, we not the Black Party, but for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, you've been selling yourself as that. So much so that some PNM people, when they speak with me, they talk about we. I say, who is we? I'm not a PNM. I've never been. No, I mean, we not them. I said, brother, I'm a Douglas. I am we and them. So don't talk to me about we in that kind of way. So the fact is that is what we have been sold. We keep telling people that the politics is race-based and all this kind of thing for 50 years, and then want to turn around and say it's not so. So if there is any reaction in that respect, I think Fudi Ferreira said it, and one of the PNM media spokespersons said he was brutal yesterday. Fudi Ferreira was there from the beginning of the PNM and so on. He has his view that the PNM should be a national party, an all-embracing party and so on. And that is why yesterday he said, when Penelope Beckles was being proposed as the opposition leader by 6 of her parliamentary colleagues, he said, this is a dangerous, reckless, and totally irresponsible move. And they are playing into the hands of the UNC, because the UNC in this election convinced the population that they have moved beyond the Indian confinement. And now the PNM is putting itself back into the African confinement. He said that yesterday. And the response was, woo, brutal, brutal. And this morning on the radio, I heard some PNM supporters basically saying, what wrong with Fudi Ferreira? You don't know there's a black people party.
I don't know if they silenced him, but I called him since last night, all day today, all his numbers, and he's my good friend, and he just didn't take up the phone. So, well, anyhow, that's another story. We are coming towards the end of the program now, and I want to perhaps start the wind up on that point. Do we have a real chance? And when I say we, I mean Trinidad and Tobago, and the politics of Trinidad and Tobago, the party politics, the individual politics, everything, how a government in office responds to the needs of the society, whether you're in Talparo or in John John. Do we have a real chance of crossing that border into something? The Prime Minister talked about it this afternoon, about a national community, a national government. Do you see us having that kind of opportunity and taking the opportunity going forward? Vasant?
I'm very optimistic, Tony, and I'm optimistic because Mrs. Bissessar understands very clearly her political career is winding down. When I say she's in the autumn of her political career, she knows that this is probably likely to be her last term as Prime Minister. She understands the errors that took place and has obviously reflected upon them. And clearly she would want to leave a legacy that's lasting and enduring. And that legacy must reflect the fact that Trinidad and Tobago, with its huge potential, with all of the ingredients present right here for success, that she will make the most of it so that she goes out in a way that she leaves Trinidad and Tobago in a far better place. There is no, in my mind, there is nothing to be had for being in office for the next 5 years at her stage in her life, at her stage in her career, not having achieved that and putting Trinidad on the footing to achieve real greatness as part of in the international community. One thing I will say is this: no one for a moment will doubt that we are now in a very different world than we were 6 months ago. Okay? Whatever existed 6 months ago has been upended. The world order has upended. And so therefore we have to treat with things very different. We have to look at them with a completely different set of lens. Because what existed before just doesn't exist anymore. Relationships, our levels of dependence, our interdependence, a lot has changed and will continue to change. What's going to be important, first of all, is leadership, the ability to envision a future for Trinidad and Tobago that allows us to, as I said before, allows us to utilize all of the ingredients that we have here to become a better people. And I think to heal those wounds that have developed and has festered and is becoming, unfortunately, a part of who we are. And I think she has a golden opportunity to correct all of those things, and with it, to almost change a culture that exists. And that culture embodies things like productivity, our own humanity, how we deal with things, how we treat the elderly, how we treat is be shaped in the next 5 years, so that in 5 years' time, her legacy is we see a completely different Trinidad and Tobago, and one where the outside world looks at us and we can feel proud that we've done this in the last 5 years. Because I say, we have all of the resources here to be able to do it.
Larry, your wind-up comment?
Well, I agree with Vasanda. That is a very nice aspiration. What my concern is do all the other people who were elected share that kind of aspiration? There's a lot of people there, some of whom I know we say there's a lot of new people, but there are a lot of people there who may be in very critical places who were also there in 2010 to 15. And their capacity for ambition, let me put it that way, I don't think is diminished. So the question of, like I said earlier, if there's a cohesive kind of outlook in a cabinet, that will be to the well-being of the government. But if there continue to be individual personal ambitions, and that becomes a stronger force than the cohesion, then we in for a little trouble. So hopefully things will go. I want to be approaching an optimist as one of your previous guests this week in terms of the future. But I am a realist in understanding that some of the forces within and from without are against that happening. But if Mrs. Persad Bissessar can overcome those negative forces, it will be to her credit, but more so it will be to the credit of Trinidad and Tobago.
And of course, there will also have to be change, as indicated earlier. On the other political side, the two groups are miles apart, made so by politicians in the main, and that's a responsibilities that politicians have to wear in their lives. But
sadly, the outgoing political leader of the PNM yesterday, in speaking to the media, sent the entirely wrong signal.
Yeah, well,
just to intervene for a moment here, Tony. I think I think that the new leader of the opposition will approach things in a far differently to the outgoing political leader. I think they have completely different personalities. I think Penny is far more likely to be similarly would have a similar outlook with regard to the development of the country, and I think she will be far more cooperative. And I feel, therefore, you're not going to have the level of antagonism as we've had in the Parliament in the last 10 years or so. And I think that will augur well for the examples that need to be set for our young people growing up and looking on.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for being on the program this afternoon. And as we reflected to our listeners and viewers, is that it's a new day, a new dawn, and the government in power, whether you like the government or not, the government is the government, and we all depend in one way or the other on the government to do what is right for the country and for each individual in the music there to send us off on our way with. Go ahead, Sir Charles.
Thank you very much, Tony, and thank you very much for your guests. Right? And of course, people, this has been your afternoon drive time exchange.
Where problems are small, nowhere else you will see every race living in harmony. African together, right here. Indian together, right here. Chinese together, right here. White man together, right here. My country Trinidad, for me to live here I must be mad. Activity, Ipagua, Carnival and Jose, Independence and Labor Day. Diwali is something to see, the faith that lights up a great country.